Chapter 1. Stella Marshall's greatest regret was falling in love with her uncle. At 10, Stella first met Ethan Hawthorne. The tall, imposing man embraced her after she'd lost both her parents, promising to protect her for the rest of his life. At 15, when Stella was bullied, it was Ethan who appeared and made her tormentors kneel and apologize. At 18, when Ethan's mission failed and he was on the brink of death, Stella ignored the doctor's warnings and donated part of her liver to save him. It was on that same day that Stella stole a kiss from him, only to be seen by the just-awakened Ethan. There was no imagined sweetness, only Ethan's shock and endless distance. This continued until the love of his life, Leela Vaughn, fell critically ill. Stella was the only successful match. The ever-indifferent Ethan came to Stella, promising to grant any request if she would just donate a kidney. Stella's silence was her refusal, and as a result, Leela Vaughn died on the operating table. Ethan didn't shed a single tear. He acted as if nothing had happened. But on the 7th day after Leela's death, Ethan exposed the diary filled with Stella's girlish secrets to the world. He branded her for life with the shame of being in love with her own uncle. On Stella's birthday, Ethan drugged and kidnapped her, hiring a dozen thugs to violate her. He stood by and watched, leaving her with only one sentence: "Don't delude yourself into thinking I'd touch you. The thought of it disgusts me." Finally, Ethan doused a nearly unconscious Stella with a basin of cold water. In a daze, Stella saw Ethan approaching her, step by step with a knife in his hand. Then with a swift, cold strike he said, "This is what you owe Leela." When she opened her eyes again, Stella was back on the day he had asked her to donate the kidney. "I'm begging you. This kidney might not mean much to you, but Leela will die without it. If you're willing to donate, I will do everything in my power to fulfill any request you have." Ethan's pleading voice echoed in Stella's ears, jolting her back to reality. She had been reborn. In her past life, Stella had refused Ethan on this very day, only to meet a horrific end. But back then, Stella had already lost part of her liver for Ethan. How could she possibly bear the risk of losing a kidney as well? Now, reborn, Stella saw everything clearly. Refusing meant death anyway. This kidney, she decided, would be the final payment for Ethan's 11 years of raising her. Once it was done, they would be even. At this thought, Stella clenched her fist and answered firmly, "I'll do it." Ethan's words caught in his throat. The doctor beside them, however, advised in alarm. "Miss Marshall, are you sure about this? We generally don't recommend a second organ donation for someone who has already been a donor. It not only significantly increases the surgical difficulty, but also carries a high risk of death." Stella heard him, but nodded emphatically. How could she not know the risks? But to get away from Ethan Hawthorne, she was willing to die if she had to. Only after watching Stella sign the consent form did Ethan's anxious heart finally settle. He had been afraid she was just bluffing, but he never expected her to actually sign the papers, and without a moment's hesitation. Thinking of this, Ethan's expression softened as he looked at her. "Since you've agreed to donate the kidney, I'll keep my word. Whatever you want, just ask. I have only one request, to sever all ties with the Hawthorne family. From this day forward, I am no longer one of them." Hearing this, Ethan's brow furrowed. "Are you serious?" He had thought Stella would use this opportunity to blackmail him into marrying her, not demand to cut ties with him. Stella looked at him, her voice cold. "Yes." Ethan stared at her suspiciously for a few seconds before his face darkened. "Stella Marshall, I suggest you drop those little schemes of yours. Don't think for a second that if you sever ties with the family, there's a chance for us. You and I will never be possible. My heart belongs to only one person, and that person is Leela, not you." Stella's eyelashes trembled slightly. I know. The humiliation of her past life was still vivid in her mind. How could she not know how much he loved Leela Vaughn? So, in this life, Stella would not love Ethan Hawthorne anymore. She just wanted to be far, far away from him. Ethan's gaze lingered on Stella's face for a moment longer. For some reason, he felt that something about her had changed, though he couldn't pinpoint what it was. He was about to say something, but Leela's voice came from the hospital room. Upon hearing it, Ethan rushed into the room almost instinctively. Stella's expression dimmed slightly before she followed him in. Leela was coughing, her eyes red-rimmed. "Ethan, please don't make things difficult for Miss Marshall. I know she doesn't like me. I can understand if she doesn't want to donate her kidney." Leela was about to say more, but Ethan gripped her hand tightly, his tone joyful. Leela, Stella has agreed to donate her kidney. You're going to be saved. Leela's voice died in her throat. She shot a stunned, then crimson-eyed, glare at Stella. Ethan, did she make you promise to marry her? Before Ethan could answer, Leela raised her hand and slapped Stella across the face. A red mark instantly appeared on Stella's cheek. Leela clutched her chest, her voice agitated. Stella Marshall, have you no shame? Ethan is your uncle. How could you do something so despicable? Ethan, if you marry her, I would rather die right now. As Leela grew more emotional, Ethan ignored the injured Stella and pulled Leela into his arms. Leela, you are the only one I love, and the only one I will ever marry. As for anyone else, they shouldn't even dream of it. Stella held her stinging cheek, a self-mocking smile on her lips. She wisely chose not to watch any longer, but as she walked away, she overheard their conversation. She's already given you a part of her liver. Will donating a kidney to me be dangerous for her? Stella's steps faltered. A sliver of hope for Ethan's answer rose in her heart, only to be utterly shattered in the next second. Leela, you know that besides you, I don't care if anyone else lives or dies. All that matters is that you get well. That's enough. After leaving the room, Stella stood calmly for a few seconds, then dialed her advisor's number. Hello, Miss Albright. About the Western project you mentioned last time, I've decided to join. Chapter 2. Her advisor, Miss Albright, was ecstatic. That's wonderful, Stella. I'm so proud of you. The country needs dedicated young people like you. But this program is very demanding, and the places we go are quite remote. Your uncle is so protective of you. Will he agree to let you go? Stella gripped her phone, her voice firm. I don't need his permission. I can decide for myself. After hanging up, Stella felt all her strength drain away, and she wanted to lean against the wall. But as she took a step back, she bumped into Ethan's solid chest. Stella flinched in surprise. Ethan's brows were knitted together. Who were you on the phone with? What was that about joining something? Stella replied calmly, Oh, my teacher was asking if I wanted to join a school club. Ethan said nothing more, simply stating in a tone that was an order, not a request. The surgery is scheduled for a week from now. In the meantime, I'll be bringing Leela home to stay. He paused for a moment, then added, his voice icy, and I don't want to find any strange letters in my study that might give Leela the wrong idea. Stella turned her head away, her fingernails digging into her palm. She managed a bitter, okay. Ever since he'd caught her stealing that kiss, Stella had written Ethan a long, heartfelt love letter every week, trying to express her feelings. But without exception, every single one had ended up in the trash. Still, Stella had stubbornly persisted. She never imagined that what she saw as declarations full of love, he saw as merely weird and inappropriate. Seeing that Stella had agreed, Ethan said no more. After giving instructions to his driver, he turned and went back into the hospital room. An hour later, Stella saw Ethan's car pull up to the hospital entrance. Ethan helped Leela into the back seat. Seeing this, Stella immediately went downstairs to the curb. Just as she reached for the car door, the vehicle sped away, leaving her in a cloud of exhaust. Stella froze. A second later, a message from Ethan appeared on her phone. Leela has a thing about cleanliness. She doesn't like the smell of strangers. Take a taxi back yourself. Stella's gaze dimmed. She put her phone away and hailed a passing cab. Once in the car, Stella stared out the window without a word. The driver kindly asked, Miss, that mark on your face looks pretty bad. Should I stop at a pharmacy for you? Stella shook her head, her eyes growing even darker. Her so-called family hadn't offered a single word of concern. The only person to show her any kindness was a complete stranger. How ironic, how laughable. After a long while, the taxi stopped in front of the mansion. Stella got out and pushed open the gate. As she entered, she didn't see Ethan. She only saw Leela, toying with a necklace. Stella looked closer and realized the necklace in Leela's hand was the jade pendant she kept in her safe. It was the only heirloom her parents had left her, something Stella treasured so much she barely dared to touch it. And now it was in Leela Vaughn's hands. Stella's face turned to ice. She held out her hand to Leela. Give me back my pendant. Miss Vaughn, you entered my room without my permission. Is this the upbringing of a high society lady? As Stella finished speaking, Leela's expression soured. But it was Ethan's voice that came from upstairs. I let her in. Leela will be the mistress of this house sooner or later. she is free to enter any room she pleases. Besides, as long as it makes Leela happy, you shouldn't have any objections, even if she wanted to stay in your room." Ethan stood before Stella, his face a mask of cold scrutiny. Stella's face went pale. Seeing Ethan, Leela grew bolder. "It's just a stupid old pendant. If you want it back, fine." With that, Leela held out the pendant to Stella. Just as Stella reached for it, the pendant slipped and fell to the floor, breaking in two. No, in that moment, the jade pendant shattered. And with it, so did Stella's heart. That was the only memento her parents had left her, her only connection to them. Stella stared at the broken pieces on the floor, her eyes bloodshot. She pushed past Leela and knelt on the ground without a care for her appearance. She tried to piece the pendant back together, but she couldn't change the fact that it was broken. Leela stood by, at a loss. She hadn't expected such a strong reaction from Stella. Ethan's brow furrowed slightly. They had lived together for so many years, yet this was the first time he had ever seen Stella lose control. But seeing Leela's frightened expression, he frowned and tried to soothe the situation. "All right, Leela didn't do it on purpose. How much was the pendant? I'll pay you for it." Chapter 3. Stella didn't respond. She just carefully gathered the shattered pieces of the pendant and put them in her bag. After a long moment, she turned to Ethan and forced a desolate smile. "There's no need, Uncle." With that, Stella walked away quickly, leaving Ethan frozen in place. Uncle? Ever since Stella had confessed her feelings, she had never once called him Uncle. No matter how many times Ethan had insisted, Stella had stubbornly refused. But now she had called him Uncle of her own accord. Ethan stood rooted to the spot, lost in thought, until Leela tugged at his arm, bringing him back to his senses. "Ethan, what's wrong?" Ethan immediately reverted to a caring tone. "I'm fine. Don't worry about what just happened. Stella's not a bad person. She's just been a bit spoiled and willful for me doting on her all these years." Leela froze for a second, surprised that Ethan would actually defend Stella. She nodded as if she understood, but in the next instant, a flash of jealousy and malice crossed her eyes. Seeking reassurance, Leela wrapped her arms around Ethan's waist and said coyly, "Ethan, let's get married after my surgery, okay? I can't wait to start our life together." A gentle look appeared in Ethan's eyes. He playfully tapped her nose, his tone doting. "All right, anything you want." Leela's voice was filled with excitement. "Really? Then I'm going to be the most beautiful bride in the world." For the next several days, Stella was at the university, handling the paperwork for the Western project. She was busy from morning till night, coming and going. Though they lived in the same house, she never once ran into Ethan. One day, Stella carried a large box of the love letters she had once written to the fireplace, intending to destroy them completely. Just as she was burning the last one, Ethan's sharp voice came from behind her. "What are you doing?" Stella didn't speak, but Ethan saw the half-burnt letter. His face turned ashen. He strode forward and grabbed her wrist. His voice was low and menacing. "Stella, what new trick are you trying to pull? Trying to get my attention this way? Is this fun for you?" Stella lowered her head and pulled her arm free from his grasp. "You're overthinking it." But this only confirmed Ethan's suspicions. He announced coldly, 10 days from now is my wedding to Leela. You can come." Stella's face went white as a sheet, her smile strained. "Congratulations." 10 days from now, she would already be on her way to the Western project. She probably wouldn't have the chance to attend his wedding. But Stella didn't say that. She simply turned to leave. Just as she reached the door, Ethan called out to her. "Leela said a wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event, and she doesn't trust anyone else to plan it." Stella didn't understand what he meant. "So?" she asked. "So, I want you to plan our wedding. You grew up with me, you're sure to know what I want." Chapter 4. Stella lowered her eyes and smiled, hiding the self-mockery and icy sarcasm in her gaze. "Uncle, I really don't have feelings for you anymore. You don't need to humiliate me like this." After saying her piece, Stella strode out of the mansion, leaving Ethan standing there, stunned. Stella took a taxi to the university. She still had some forms to fill out. As she left the office after completing the paperwork, she suddenly felt countless eyes on her, accompanied by sneers. "Oh my God, is that for real? Rich people really play rough. See, the more proper they look on the outside, the wilder they are in private. I've already got the novel title picked out. The Tycoons Kept Canary." Just as Stella was wondering what was going on, her dorm roommate rushed over and grabbed her arm. "Stella, You have to check the trending topics. Stella quickly pulled out her phone and saw a headline glaring back at her. Hawthorne heirs forbidden love exposed. She clicked on it in disbelief, only to find a pixelated, scandalous video. The faces in the video were unmistakably Ethan's and hers, and she was on the bottom, shamelessly begging Ethan for pleasure. Her eyes turned bloodshot, her fists clenched. "This video is fake, I've never done anything like that." "I believe you, Stella. This trending topic was obviously bought. You have to find the person who started this rumor and make them pay." Hearing this, Stella immediately hailed a taxi back to the mansion to discuss it with Ethan. As she reached the top of the stairs, she saw Ethan blocking the landing. Before she could speak, Ethan glared at her, his voice cold and laced with sarcasm. "Is this what you call not having feelings for me anymore? You're a woman, yet to ruin my wedding with Leela, you'd go so far as to destroy your own reputation. Do you have any sense of shame left?" Stella bit her lip, wanting to say something, but the words wouldn't come out. She never imagined Ethan would think of her this way. In that instant, she lost all will to argue. Ethan, however, took her silence as a sign of guilt. A sneer played on his lips, his expression growing colder. "Stella, if you think I'll be forced by public opinion to marry you, you've made a huge mistake. I, Ethan Hawthorne, will marry no one in this life but Leela Vaughn." Just as he finished, Leela, who had been listening from behind, heard everything. She walked towards Stella, her tone dismissive. "Miss Marshall, a young woman should have some self-respect, not debase herself like this." Stella tried to explain, but Leela secretly pushed her. Behind Stella was a staircase with 50 steps. In the next moment, Leela also pretended to twist her ankle and fell forward. In that critical instant, Ethan, without a moment's hesitation, grabbed Leela's hand. It wasn't until he heard the sound of Stella tumbling down the stairs that Ethan finally noticed her. Stella lay curled into a ball of pain, biting her lip to stifle her cries as large, silent tears streamed down her face, as if they could wash away the intense agony. Seeing this, Ethan's pupils constricted, and he ran down the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. "Stella, how are you? Are you okay?" Chapter 5. When Stella woke up, the first thing she saw was Ethan's haggard face. Seeing her awake, his tone softened for once. "The reason I didn't save you was because Leela is a patient." Stella replied faintly, "I understand." Ethan let out an imperceptible sigh and then instructed, "You're donating a kidney in a few days. You must take care of your body." Stella managed a bitter smile. So that's why Ethan was here taking care of her. He was afraid an injury would delay the kidney donation for Leela. After a moment of silence, he spoke again. "And no matter what, I won't forget my promise. Even after I'm married, I will still protect you for the rest of your life." Stella's eyes lifted slightly. "Too bad," she thought to herself, "I don't need it anymore." For the rest of the day, Ethan didn't return. Stella waited alone for her IV drip to finish, then checked herself out of the hospital. Just as she finished the paperwork, she saw a gurney being rushed towards the emergency room. Stella instantly recognized Ethan's frantic figure beside the gurney, and lying on it was none other than Leela Vaughn. Stella's mind went blank. In her past life, her refusal to donate a kidney had led to Leela's death. Now that she had agreed to donate, why was Leela on a gurney? She didn't have time to figure out why, she just ran towards the emergency room. At the entrance, a distraught Ethan sat with his head down, his fingers drumming anxiously on the bench. Stella asked him what had happened. It turned out Leela had a blood-clotting disorder. She had felt dizzy while showering, hit her head on the bathtub, and caused a cerebral hemorrhage. After a while, a doctor emerged from the emergency room. "The patient has lost a lot of blood. Is there a family member who can donate?" Ethan shot to his feet. "I'll do it. The patient has Rh-negative blood. What is your blood type, sir?" At this, Ethan's face turned pale. His voice was trembling and weak. "I'm type B. Rh-negative blood was a rare type. Of those present, only Stella had it." Without a moment's hesitation, Stella stood up. "I'm Rh-negative. I'll do it." Everything she had been through in her past life was still fresh in her mind. Now that she finally had a chance to escape her fate, she could not let history repeat itself. And so, a nurse led Stella away and drew a full 1,000 milliliters of blood. Afterward, Stella's vision went black and she collapsed in the donation room. When she woke up, she was all alone. She immediately tore the needle from her arm, got out of bed, and ran barefoot to Leela's room. When she reached the door, a tender scene unfolded before her. Ethan was holding Leela tightly, as if he had just gotten her back from the brink of death, whispering hoarsely, "You're okay, you're okay." Leela managed a weak smile. "Ethan, if I had died, it would have been perfect for you and Miss Marshall. Why did you have to go to all this trouble?" Hearing this, Ethan solemnly placed Leela's hand over his heart. "Leela, don't you ever say such foolish things. Can you feel this? My heart beats only for you. Don't mention irrelevant people and hurt our relationship. In this life, and for all of eternity, I will only love you." Stella felt a sharp jolt in her heart, a real, piercing pain. She leaned against the wall, a deep sadness in her eyes as she murmured to herself, "This time, the tragedy won't happen again." Chapter 6. Not long after being discharged, Ethan received an invitation from an auction house. When he told Leela, she excitedly ran to her room to pick out an outfit. After a moment, he looked at Stella on the sofa and spoke as if bestowing a great favor. "You should come too, as a thank you for donating blood for Leela." Stella was about to refuse, but Ethan had already turned and gone back to his room, giving her no chance to speak. At the auction, Ethan unhesitatingly bid on and won every item that caught Leela's interest. Stella, on the other hand, sat beside them, completely uninterested, with no intention of raising a paddle. Just then, a priceless set of jewelry was brought out, and gasps of astonishment filled the hall. Leela cooed at Ethan, "Ethan, I want to wear this jewelry when I marry you and be the most radiant bride." Without a second thought, Ethan raised his paddle. In the end, he won the set for a staggering $120 million. Everyone in the room marveled at what a wife-doting madman Officer Hawthorne was. Stella couldn't even be bothered to lift her eyes until the auctioneer's voice caught her attention. This next item is of great historical significance. It's a bullet casing left behind by Captain Marshall from a great battle 10 years ago, Captain Marshall. That was her late father's name. Stella's head shot up, her eyes wide with disbelief. Her eyes grew moist and red, and without hesitation, she raised the bidding paddle beside her. Ethan didn't bid, but watched Stella with a complicated expression. 300,000 going once, 300,000 going twice. All right, congratulations to Miss Marsh. Wait, Leela, who had been uninterested until now, suddenly shook Ethan's arm, pleading, "Ethan, I want that bullet casing for my collection too." Perhaps because he knew what the casing meant to Stella, Ethan hesitated this time. But seeing the expectant look in Leela's eyes, he turned to Stella and tried to reason with her. "Stella, drop your bid. I can buy you anything else you want, but Leela wants this one." A bleak sadness filled Stella's eyes. She didn't speak, but stubbornly raised her paddle again. Seeing this, Ethan's expression darkened. As if making a final decision, he made a gesture to the auctioneer for an unconditional bid. My God, Officer Hawthorne made an unconditional bid. Who would dare compete with that? It's a guaranteed loss. Wow, I've never seen that gesture before. Officer Hawthorne truly is a wife-doting madman. The chatter around them grew louder as Stella's face grew paler. He knew how important that bullet casing was to her, and yet the light in Stella's eyes completely faded. She nodded, her eyes welling with tears. "Fine." She released the bidding paddle she was clenching and at the same time let go of her years-long obsession with Ethan Hawthorne. Stella bent down, picked up her bag, and, ignoring Ethan's astonished gaze, quickly left the auction house. A notification popped up on her phone with her flight details. The flight was for 6 p.m. tomorrow, the day after her kidney donation. Stella looked at the time and breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, only one more day. Then she could leave for good. Back at the mansion, Stella quickly packed her suitcase. It was laughable, really. She had lived here for over a decade, yet she had fewer belongings than Leela, who had just moved in. Just as she put the suitcase away, the door to her room was kicked open by Ethan. His face was terrifyingly dark, and the low pressure he emitted was palpable, making one shiver. His harsh gaze was like a sword piercing right through her. His voice was as cold as ice. "Stella Marshall, when did you become this kind of person? To get what you want, you'd stoop to being a thief." Stella stood there, completely baffled. Before she could ask what he meant, Ethan cut her off. "I know that bullet casing was your father's. I had already planned to give it to you after Leela got tired of it. But for you to do this, you've disappointed me immensely. a wave of intense anger washed over Ethan. His voice was frozen. That you've turned out this way is my failure as your guardian. To do right by your parents' memory, I have to teach you a proper lesson. The man was trembling with rage. He strode forward, raised his hand, and slapped Stella across the face. Stella's head snapped to the side, a red mark instantly appearing on her cheek. Her mind went blank, her eyes filled with disbelief. In all these years, this was the first time Ethan had ever hit her, and it was for a crime she didn't commit. Just as Ethan lowered his hand, his phone rang. It was the hospital. "Hello, is this a relative of Miss Vaughn? She's in the emergency room right now. Could you please come to the hospital?" Chapter 7. Ethan's expression changed instantly. In a flash, he was out of the mansion. By the time Stella arrived at the hospital, the doctor was just coming out of the emergency room. He looked at Ethan with a grave expression. "Miss Vaughn's condition is critical. We've moved the kidney transplant surgery up. It's in half an hour. Could you please contact the donor and ask if they are available now?" Before Ethan could answer, Stella's voice came from behind him. "I'm available, doctor, I'm available." Stella clutched her bruised cheek, her heart now completely devoid of any lingering attachment. She just wanted to get away from Ethan Hawthorne, to leave the Hawthorne family, and to sever all ties with them forever. A complex look flickered in Ethan's eyes, but he still managed to say, "Thank you." Stella didn't reply. She just took out her phone and changed her flight to one leaving that afternoon. 30 minutes later, Stella was lying on the operating table. But she felt no fear, only a sense of relief and liberation. Just as she settled in, a nurse rushed in anxiously. "This is bad, we've run out of anesthesia. There's only enough for one person." The doctor took off his gloves and went to discuss the situation with Ethan outside the door. A moment later, Stella heard Ethan's firm voice. "Leela's body is weak, she can't go without anesthesia." After a while, the doctor came back in. His eyes, as he looked at her, were filled with sympathy. "Miss Marshall, you will have to undergo this surgery without any anesthetic. If you don't think you can handle it, you can still back out of the donation now." "No need, I can handle it." Although the answer was what she had expected, Stella couldn't help but feel a chill in her heart. Her dear uncle, her only family, could so consistently make the same choice, even though she had never, from start to finish, harmed anyone. The doctor said no more, only offering words of comfort in her ear. The surgery was an agonizing ordeal. The pain of undergoing an operation without anesthesia was unimaginable. Stella's veins bulged, cold sweat beaded on her forehead, and despite clenching her teeth, she couldn't stop herself from screaming. By the time the kidney donation was over, Stella had long since passed out from the pain. When she woke up again, the bedside was empty. Only the nurse who came in to change her dressing gave her a look of concern. "Miss Marshall, you're awake? That uncle of yours is truly heartless, to do this to you without anesthesia, just for his girlfriend." Stella didn't respond, just gave a pale smile. After the nurse left, she checked the time on her phone. She had 2 hours. If she took a taxi to get her luggage and then went to the airport, she would be just in time. Stella breathed a sigh of relief. As she tried to get out of bed, a splitting pain shot through her. It was a pain that pierced her bones and struck her soul, as if countless sharp blades were slicing her up from the inside. Every heartbeat was accompanied by a heart-wrenching scream, but the thought of leaving Ethan Hawthorne gave her the strength to push herself up from the bed. She painstakingly changed her clothes, picked up the severance agreement she had been carrying with her, and walked step by step to Leela's room. Inside, Ethan was watching a sleeping Leela, so engrossed that he didn't notice Stella enter. It was only when Stella held the agreement out to him that he reacted. His face darkened when he saw what it was. He asked in a low voice, "What's the meaning of this? You're really planning to cut ties with me. I told you, there's no possibility between us. Why are you still fixated on this?" Pain caused sweat to bead on Stella's forehead. She gritted her teeth and said stubbornly, "You promised me." Seeing Stella's pale face, Ethan suddenly felt a surge of irritation. After a moment, he took the pen and paper from her and signed his name on the agreement. With the signed paper in hand, Stella finally felt a sense of relief. She turned and limped away. Ethan frowned and asked, "You just had surgery and your body is so weak. Why aren't you resting in a hospital gown? Where are you going dressed like that?" Stella's throat was dry, her thin back looking as if it could collapse at any moment. It's too stuffy in the hospital. I'm going for a walk. Ethan watched her retreating back and for once showed a hint of concern. It's windy outside. Come back soon. Stella hummed in acknowledgement but whispered in her heart, Ethan Hawthorne, I'm never coming back. She collected her luggage and, dragging her battered body, boarded a plane to Westlake City. The sun cast a long shadow behind her slender figure. Stella turned her head for one last, long look at the city. Goodbye to the place I lived for 12 years. Goodbye, Ethan Hawthorne. Chapter 8. The wind blowing through the window was strong, making Leela shrink back into her covers. Noticing this, Ethan immediately got up and closed the window. As he looked at the wind whipping things around outside, for some reason, an image of Stella floated into his mind. She had looked so fragile today, as if a strong gust could blow her over. Just looking at her, Ethan could feel her pain. If he had chosen to give the anesthesia to Stella, would she be in less pain now? The moment the thought crossed his mind, Ethan shook his head, forcing it away. If he had chosen Stella, then Leela would be the one suffering. Leela had always been afraid of pain. Stella would surely understand his choice. With his mind made up, Ethan turned his gentle gaze back to Leela and pressed a deep kiss to her forehead. 5 days later, Leela was discharged from the hospital. It wasn't until Ethan had settled Leela in the car that he remembered Stella was still at the hospital. Ethan mentally kicked himself. After some thought, he decided to go back to the hospital to pick her up. After all, Stella had just donated a kidney for Leela. Both for decency's and duty's sake, he shouldn't just leave her there alone. But when he got to her floor, he suddenly realized he didn't even know Stella's room number. For the past 5 days, he had been by Leela's side, never leaving her. He had completely forgotten about Stella's existence. He frowned and asked a passing nurse, "Excuse me, do you know which room Stella Marshall is in?" Stella Marshall. We don't have a patient by that name. Ethan's expression grew serious. How is that possible? Please think carefully. She had surgery on the same day as my girlfriend. The nurse suddenly clapped her head. Oh, I remember now. She was discharged 5 days ago. Discharged? Are you sure you're not mistaken? She just had major surgery. How could she be discharged? I'm not mistaken. The doctor even advised her to stay and rest for a few more days, but she insisted on leaving. Maybe she had something urgent to attend to. The nurse walked away, leaving Ethan standing there, unable to process what he'd heard for a long time. Discharged 5 days ago. That meant she wasn't just going for a walk that day. She had left the hospital. Ethan froze, a shocking thought suddenly exploding in his mind. Stella had left him, but as soon as the thought appeared, he immediately dismissed it. How could that be? Stella loved him so much. She had donated part of her liver for him. How could she bear to leave him? She must have disliked the hospital environment and gone back to the mansion early. Yes, that had to be it. With this in mind, Ethan hurried downstairs and got into the back of the car. Leela asked from the back seat, "Ethan, why are you alone? Where's Miss Marshall?" Ethan's face darkened. "Forget her, we're going home." When they arrived at the mansion, Ethan impatiently called out Stella's name but received no reply. He ran up the stairs and threw open the door to Stella's room, only to see a figure bent over, cleaning. Seeing this, a sarcastic smile touched Ethan's lips. He knew it. Stella couldn't leave him. "Stella Marshall, you've gotten bold, haven't you? Daring to check yourself out of the hospital without a word. Do you have any idea that everyone was waiting for you?" But in the next second, he saw the family's maid turn around, trembling. She stammered, "Sir, Miss Marshall left the mansion 5 days ago. I was just cleaning the room." Chapter 9. Hearing this, Ethan looked around the room and saw that the once cozy bedroom was now nothing but an empty bed frame. His pupils contracted. He kicked over a nearby chair, his knuckles turning white, the veins on his forehead bulging. "Stella Marshall, you really have grown wings, you dare to pull this stunt of running away from home?" The butler spoke cautiously from the side. "Sir, shall I send people to look for Miss Marshall? No, finding her now would be playing right into her hands. If I ignore her, she'll come back on her own within 3 days. For the next few days, Ethan was busy with wedding preparations. From the bridal bouquet to the wedding rings, Ethan personally selected everything, handling every detail himself. It was the day before his wedding to Leela, but Stella had not appeared once. She hadn't even sent a single message. Ethan finally lost his patience and called Stella. He said in a low voice, "Stella, have you had enough of this?" But all he heard was a mechanical voice. "We're sorry, the number you have dialed has been switched off. Please try again later." Ethan's face changed. As far as he could remember, this was the first time Stella had ever blocked his number. No matter how big their fights were, the most she would do was give him the silent treatment. But now, she actually dared to block him. He held the phone, seething. "Fine, Stella Marshall. We'll see if you can stay away for the rest of your life." His wedding was tomorrow. He didn't believe she could bear not to come. After all, she had once been willing to ruin her own reputation and become a laughingstock just to force him to marry her. How could someone like that stand by and let him marry someone else? At this thought, Ethan's slightly panicked heart completely calmed down. Ethan and Leela's wedding was held by the sea. Simply because Leela had once said her dream wedding would have the ocean, Ethan had chosen a seaside venue. The wedding was beautifully decorated. Every visible decoration had been personally arranged by Ethan. Leela loved photos, so Ethan had tens of thousands of flowers flown in to create a 10-meter-high flower wall. The desserts were custom, made by a Michelin-starred chef, whom Ethan had specially flown in from Italy. And the military guards patrolling the entrance made it clear just how important this wedding was to him. The guests took their seats, their eyes filled with awe, marveling at Ethan's wealth. Not long after the guests were seated, the wedding march began to play majestically. At that moment, countless drones formed a picture in the sky of Ethan and Leela kissing. And Leela, wearing a wedding dress worth millions, walked step by step towards Ethan. The children in the audience gasped at the bride's beauty, but Ethan's gaze remained fixed on the entrance. Today was his wedding, but he hadn't received a single message from Stella all day. He had specifically asked his men to keep an eye out for her, but the answer was that she had not been seen. Could it be true what Stella had said before? Did she really not love him anymore? Just as Ethan was lost in thought, the officiant's voice brought him back. "Mr. Ethan Hawthorne, do you take Miss Leela Vaughn to be your wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do you part?" Hearing this, Ethan hesitated. Just as he lifted the microphone to speak, the large screen behind him suddenly lit up. As Ethan saw the content on the screen, his pupils dilated. He was so shocked he couldn't speak. Chapter 10. On the large screen, a scandalous video of a man and a woman was playing. The female lead was none other than the bride herself, Leela Vaughn. The Leela in the video was nothing like the demure girl she was with Ethan. Instead, she was wildly and actively seductive. And while the male lead changed in every video, the female lead remained the same from beginning to end. Ethan stared at Leela in disbelief. The Leela he knew was so traditional she had insisted on saving their first time for their wedding night. And now, the men in these videos were all different. Was this really the Leela he knew? The guests gasped in unison, some even taking out their phones to take pictures. Seeing this, Leela frantically grabbed Ethan's hand and tried to explain. "Ethan, these videos are fake. You have to believe me, I've never done anything so sordid." As Leela spoke, Ethan's parents addressed him. "Ethan, a woman like Leela Vaughn absolutely cannot marry into our family. The wedding isn't over yet. You must know when to cut your losses." Ethan's close friend also tried to persuade him. "He's right, Ethan. This video doesn't look fake." But when Ethan saw the tears welling up in Leela's eyes, he took her hand and shouted at his friend. "Enough, I believe Leela. The wedding will continue. If anyone dares to spread this video today, I'll make sure you disappear from the capital by tomorrow." The guests below instantly fell silent. After all, Ethan Hawthorne certainly had that kind of power. Just as everyone thought the drama was over and the wedding would proceed as planned, Ethan's assistant handed him a file folder. Leela noticed and quickly tried to distract him. "Ethan, let's finish the ceremony first. The guests are all waiting." But it was too late. Ethan had already opened the folder and seen its contents. His eyes were glued to the document, unwilling to miss a single word. The folder detailed all of Leela's misdeeds, with supporting evidence attached. The scandalous video of him and Stella hadn't been released by Stella. Leela had faked it. Leela had got close to him because she was in debt from gambling, and she was using him to pay it off. When he reached the last page, Ethan stumbled back a step. His face turned deathly pale, his eyes filled with disbelief. He had thought Leela was just blinded by greed, but he never imagined that even her story about having a congenital kidney defect was a lie to tie him to her for good. Leela had deliberately damaged her own kidney, just so he would feel guilty enough to marry her. And he had made Stella donate a kidney for someone like that, leaving her covered in scars. What had he done? The wedding was abruptly and embarrassingly called off due to the scandal. The Hawthorne family sent all the guests away. After they had gone, Ethan smashed the wedding venue to pieces. The diamond ring he had custom-made for Leela was hurled into the sea with all his might. Leela, pale-faced, begged Ethan for a chance to explain, but he refused to even look at her. After wrecking the venue, Ethan didn't stop. He called a private hospital and scheduled a kidney removal surgery. Half an hour later, Leela was forcibly strapped to an operating table. Without any anesthesia, the surgeons began the operation. Leela's pleas for help echoed throughout the operating room, but Ethan's voice was as cold as a tomb when he ordered, "Continue." In an instant, blood stained Leela's clothes, turning the operating room into a brutal, gory scene. Chapter 11. After this incident, the reputation of the upright and respectable Hawthorne family hit rock bottom in the capital. In the military compound, some people even turned Ethan's scandal into a nursery rhyme for children to sing. The shame followed Ethan from his home all the way to his superiors. His commanding officer's expression was grim. "Ethan Hawthorne, I always thought you were the smartest of the bunch, but it turns out you're the most foolish. To let personal affairs tarnish the image of a soldier to this extent is unforgivable. Your name was on the promotion list this year, but you've thrown that away yourself." When Ethan numbly left the military base, his parents, Arthur and Alina Hawthorne, summoned him. The moment he stepped into the house, his father's hand struck him across the face, leaving Ethan stunned. Before he could process what was happening, Arthur Hawthorne spoke. "You severed ties with Stella?" Before Ethan could reply, his father continued. "Ethan Hawthorne, a man cannot live without a conscience. Have you forgotten how Stella's father saved your life on the battlefield? How could you do something so ungrateful?" Ethan's face went white. He stammered, "At the time, Leela needed a kidney and only Stella was a match. Her condition was to sever ties, so before he could finish, Arthur clutched his chest and interrupted him. "Are you telling me that Leela's kidney came from Stella?" Ethan nodded. Arthur looked at his son in disbelief. "Ethan Hawthorne, you need to remember something. Stella doesn't owe our family anything. In fact, our family has always been indebted to her. And now you, taking advantage of the fact that she has no parents, have hurt and bullied her without restraint. When I die, how am I supposed to face her parents?" Alina, who had been trying to calm her husband, could no longer hold back after hearing what Ethan said. She looked at him with profound disappointment. "Ethan, you hurt Stella so badly for that woman. I can't even imagine what that girl must have gone through to agree to donate one of her kidneys." Hearing this, a wave of belated regret washed over Ethan. He said guiltily, "I didn't know things would turn out this way. I never meant to hurt her." He had only wanted to completely crush any hope Stella had of being with him. He had never realized the immense pain he was inflicting on her in the process. When Ethan left the Hawthorne estate, he was staggering as if all his strength had been drained. At the hospital, Leela had woken up. Ethan was watching her coolly, his expression devoid of any emotion. Seeing him, Leela shivered. She never thought this man could be so ruthless. Even though she had deceived him, they had been together for so long, there must have been some affection between them. But he had shown no regard for their past relationship, even having her kidney removed without anesthesia. Ethan's voice was frigid. "Besides these things, what else have you been hiding from me?" Leela trembled. She knew that with Ethan's resources, he would find out eventually, so she didn't dare lie. She said in a panic, "That time she fell down the stairs, it was me who pushed her." Hearing this, the veins on Ethan's forehead bulged. He could no longer control himself and lunged forward, his hands closing around Leela's neck. He never imagined Leela's heart could be so vicious. If Ethan had loved Leela before, his hatred for her now was just as intense. In that moment, Leela thought she saw death itself. She cried and begged him to let go, but Ethan remained unmoved. Just as she thought she was about to die, he released her. His voice was a frozen shard of ice. "Letting you die would be too easy for you." Ethan picked up his phone and dialed a number. Hello, are you still looking for people to work in Africa? I have a candidate for you. Chapter 12. Riverbend Village, Westlake City. Stella stood at a worn-out lectern, reading from a primary school language textbook. This was her 5th day in Riverbend. It was only after arriving that she realized how harsh the conditions were for the children here. She had thought it was just a lack of educational resources, but she soon learned that the children here couldn't even be sure of their next meal. Their only source of income was the meager earnings their parents made from grueling fishing trips. But since Stella had decided to join the Western Project, she was determined to do her best to help these children. While she couldn't provide them with material wealth, she would do everything in her power to teach them useful knowledge. Education might not be a guarantee to change their destiny, but it was their best chance. As Stella was quizzing the children on ancient poems, a commotion broke out in the classroom. Stella looked towards the door and saw Felix Ford leaning against the window, a playful smile on his face as he watched her. When he noticed her gaze, Felix raised an eyebrow at her. Just then, the bell rang, signaling the end of class. Stella put down her textbook and walked over to him. Felix Ford was a notorious playboy from the capital. He had confessed his feelings to Stella no less than 10 times, only to be rejected each time. But this time, Felix, who was known for hating hardship, had uncharacteristically signed up for the Western Project. This teaching experience had changed Stella's stereotypical view of him. Felix was actually quite reliable. She looked at him and asked, "What are you doing here?" Felix's smile didn't fade. He simply handed her his phone. Stella opened it and saw a video. The man in the video was Ethan. The Ethan in the video bore no resemblance to the proud, golden boy she knew. He was a disheveled mess, downing glass after glass of alcohol until he finally passed out on the bar. Stella's eyes widened in shock. The Ethan she knew was so self-disciplined he never went to bars. But the man in the video couldn't seem to stop drinking. Was this really the Ethan Hawthorne she knew? Sensing her surprise, Felix patiently explained. That woman Ethan was going to marry turned out to be a scammer. On their wedding day, her scandalous videos were exposed to everyone. The whole thing caused a huge uproar and brought great shame to the Hawthorne family. I heard that not only did Ethan lose his promotion, but he also got a dressing down from his superiors. And knowing Ethan's vengeful nature, he had her kidney removed that very day and sent her off to Africa. If you ask me, that's pretty ruthless. After all, she was someone he once loved deeply, yet he showed her no mercy. Stella's expression was pained. There was a time when she, too, had experienced Ethan's ruthlessness. She just never thought his cruelty would one day be directed at Leela Vaughn. Even now, the events of her past life sent a chill down her spine when she thought about them. Thankfully, in this life, she had not repeated her mistakes. Felix looked at Stella with a pained expression. From the moment he fell for her, he knew she was in love with her uncle, Ethan Hawthorne. But he had persisted in pursuing her, hoping his sincerity would win her over. All he got was one rejection after another, and he knew the reason without her having to say it. He couldn't understand what was so great about that old man Ethan. Besides his looks, his character was abysmal. He had taken advantage of Stella's love for him to hurt and humiliate her. A man like that didn't deserve to be loved by someone as good as Stella. So, when he found out what Ethan had done to Stella, he had immediately sent people to investigate Leela. He never expected to find so much dirt on her that it would fill several pages. Yet Ethan, who was usually so cautious, had never bothered to investigate, instead directing all his malice towards the one person who was devoted to him. That was why he had arranged for the videos and evidence to be shown at the wedding. It wasn't to ruin Ethan's wedding. It was to make Ethan live with a guilty conscience for the rest of his life, to make him feel eternal remorse towards Stella. When he saw a post on social media of a dead drunk Ethan, he had immediately come to share it with Stella. But he hadn't expected her to look so unhappy. He had come all this way to join the Western Project for one reason only, to see Stella happy, so he tried to distract her. "Stella, look, the weather is so nice today. The sun is even shining into the classroom." Stella's gaze shifted to the sun in the distance. At that moment, Felix's voice softened. "What I mean is, there's always a new day waiting for us." Chapter 13. The sunlight fell on the young man, making his eyes shine even brighter. The school bell rang, and Felix started to run off, waving back at her as he went. He was bright and passionate. For a moment, Stella was captivated. In that instant, she thought Felix was even more dazzling than the sun. The Western project was a 2-year commitment. Over this time, Stella had become well acquainted with the villagers of Riverbend. The villagers were warm and friendly. On weekends, some even invited her to go out on their boats to experience the daily life of a fisherman. This kind of rural life was something Stella had always longed for. And now, her dream had come true. Meanwhile, back in the capital, Ethan had been hospitalized for excessive drinking. The incident with Leela had taken a huge toll on him. He was constantly filled with regret for not listening to Stella's explanation, regret for not discovering Leela's true colors sooner. But it was all too late. Stella was gone. Whether they truly didn't know or were deliberately hiding it, he had asked everyone he could think of, but no one knew where Stella was. And the people he had sent to find her had come back with no news. He even wondered if Stella had left the country. Why else would he be unable to find any trace of her? But he had checked every international flight manifest and found no record of her. For the first time, he felt how vast the world was, so vast that the moment Stella left, he could lose all track of her. So he could only turn to alcohol to numb himself, to try and ease his guilt. This wasn't a small matter. It was a kidney an adult only had 2, and he, for Leela's sake, had shamelessly taken one of hers. Ethan's friends all came to visit him. They all offered their condolences, but none of them knew the real reason for his drinking. The only one who knew the truth couldn't bring himself to feel any sympathy for Ethan. He believed that matters of the heart were personal, with no right or wrong. But Ethan had selfishly hurt someone else for his own feelings. Even if Ethan was his friend, he couldn't defend him, because this was all his own doing. After 3 days in the hospital, Ethan was discharged. He returned to the mansion and, looking towards Stella's bedroom, subconsciously called out her name. Stella, but there was no reply. Before, Stella would have come running out, calling his name sweetly. But now there was only an empty room. Ethan's eyes dimmed. He staggered up the stairs, holding onto the banister. He went to Stella's room, trying to find some trace of her love for him. But he found that the photo of them on the wall was shattered in 2. And the love letters she had once written him had all been burned to ash. Just like Stella herself, she had completely vanished from his world. He had once repeatedly warned Stella not to love him anymore, but now that she truly didn't, he was filled with regret. Perhaps this was his just deserts. Ethan let out a self-deprecating laugh. Looking at the empty room where they had once shared so much laughter, he felt a heart-wrenching pain. Just as he slumped down by the door, his phone rang. "This is the detective agency. We've found the person you asked us to look for." Chapter 14. When Ethan arrived in Riverbend in a 4-wheel drive truck, he could hardly believe his eyes. Even during his military training exercises, he had never encountered an environment this poor. It was the first time he had seen a village with nothing but muddy paths for roads. He couldn't understand why Stella would come to such a place to suffer. And when he arrived at the small school, he felt a sense of unfamiliarity towards Stella for the first time. The Stella he remembered was a pampered young lady he had raised in luxury, her hands unsoiled by manual labor. But now, looking through the window, he saw Stella standing in the classroom, speaking with eloquence and passion. Her eyes sparkled with light, and she was wearing a simple, inexpensive linen dress. Her clear, fluent Mandarin made even the dullest textbook passages come alive. For a moment, he was mesmerized. It felt as if he was truly seeing Stella for the first time. When the bell rang, he was about to go to her, but another young man beat him to it. He recognized the man's profile instantly. It was Felix Ford, the notorious playboy from the capital who had relentlessly pursued Stella. What was he doing here? Could it be for Stella? As he was wondering, he saw Felix reach out and pat Stella's head. Seeing this, the veins in Ethan's neck bulged. He stepped forward and pushed them apart. He pointed a finger at Felix and warned, "Felix Ford, aren't there enough debutantes in the capital for you to mess with? How dare you set your sights on someone from my family? I'm warning you. Stay away from Stella." Felix glanced at Ethan and nodded. Then he turned to Stella and asked gently, "Stella, are you part of his family?" Stella looked at Ethan, then quickly distanced herself. "No." Her tone was so cold that for a moment, Ethan felt like a stranger. He was left speechless by her words. Felix, however, looked at him provocatively. You hear that? I'm not the one who should be staying away from Stella. You are. A wounded look appeared in Ethan's eyes. He looked at Stella, his tone pleading. Stella, I'm sorry. I know I've hurt you in the past, but I never intended to abandon you. In my heart, you've always been part of the Hawthorne family. The Hawthorne home will always be your home. Stella let out a scoff. I'm sorry, I don't have a family. My family died a long time ago. She had once considered Ethan her only family, but how had he treated her? She didn't want to think about those painful memories, nor did she want to bring them up again. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He was right. How could he have the audacity to call her his family? He had even fought with her over her father's memento and falsely accused her of being a thief. How could he say such things? A lump formed in Ethan's throat. He wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come out. Felix, however, spoke first. Ethan Hawthorne, if I were you, I wouldn't have the face to show up here. Have you forgotten how you hurt Stella? The whole slap her and then give her a sweet treat thing is out of fashion. Stella is my girlfriend now. Please have some self-respect. Ethan's eyes widened in shock. He looked at Stella, his expression filled with disbelief. Stella, is what he's saying true? Are you really with him? Chapter 15. Yes, I'm with him. So what? Stella's face was terrifyingly cold, her voice like ice. Ethan, however, spoke with a grave tone. I won't allow you to be with him. Don't you know what kind of person Felix Ford is? He's had a new girlfriend every other week for years. A playboy like him is just toying with you. He'll never be serious about you. Stella's lips curled into a sarcastic smile. You're right, I don't know what kind of person he is. But I know exactly what kind of person you are. Do you need me to list all the things you've done to me? Besides, who I'm with now has nothing to do with you, does it? Please go back to where you came from. You're not welcome here. A wounded look filled Ethan's eyes. Stella, you'd say such things to me for his sake? I'm only doing this for your own good. I would never harm you. Stella's tone was laced with mockery. Right, you're doing this for my good. So good that you let me donate a kidney to your white moonlight without anesthesia. If that's your way of being good to me, then I'm sorry, but I can't handle it. With that, Stella took Felix's hand and walked away, leaving Ethan standing there in a daze. He had traveled all this way to see her, not sleeping for a whole day. And all he got was the news that Stella was with another man. It was like a bolt from the blue. Meanwhile, Felix looked at Stella nervously. Stella, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that just now. Before Felix could finish, Stella cut him off. You don't have to apologize. I know you meant well. In fact, I'm very grateful. Felix's eyes lit up. He scratched his head. Really? Stella nodded. Felix hesitated, then explained. What he said just now, it's not true. Ever since I started liking you, I haven't had a single girlfriend. I'm serious about you, and I'm not the playboy people think I am. I have my own businesses. Stella walked a few steps ahead, hiding a smile. I know. Felix's face flushed. He stammered, So, are you willing to give me a chance to pursue you? Stella turned around, her smile radiant. If I wasn't giving you a chance, what do you call what you're doing right now? The tips of Felix's ears turned red. His voice was filled with joy and excitement. Stella Marshall, one day you will be my girlfriend. A few days later, Felix mysteriously led Stella to an empty field. Stella looked at him, puzzled. What are you dragging me out here for in the middle of the night? I need to sleep, I'm so tired. Just as she finished speaking, a crackling sound filled the air. In the next moment, a spectacular fireworks display erupted in the sky. So brilliant, so beautiful. Stella was completely captivated. At that moment, Felix opened his hand, and a necklace appeared as if by magic. It wasn't just any necklace. It was the jade pendant that Leela had broken. The pendant had been perfectly restored, looking as good as new. It was as if it had never been broken, and her parents had never left her. Tears welled up in Stella's eyes. She never thought that something she had mentioned in passing would be remembered by Felix. Felix's hands were trembling with nervousness. Stella, my whole life has been planned out for me by my parents. There's never been anything that I've decided for myself. Except for loving you, that's one thing I want to decide for myself. I had the pendant repaired for you. I want to tell you that your parents are always with you, in ways you can't see. And would I be honored enough to be your boyfriend, to be the third person to protect you? Stella Marshall, please be my girlfriend, Chapter 16. Tears streamed down Stella's face. She covered her mouth, her voice choked with emotion as she answered, Yes. An unstoppable wave of excitement washed over Felix. It all felt so surreal. Was Stella really his girlfriend? As the belated joy flooded his heart, he could no longer hold back and pulled her into a tight embrace. He whispered in her ear, "I'll be good to you for the rest of my life." Ethan, despite being rejected by Stella, hadn't given up. After what he had put Stella through, what was this in comparison? He returned to the capital, took a month's leave, and then flew back, making the long journey to Riverbend once more. When he arrived, he was frozen in place by the scene before him. In a secluded corner, against a wall, Felix's hand was braced against the wall, trapping Stella in his arms in an intimate embrace. Just as Ethan's eyes widened, Felix leaned in and kissed her. It was a forceful, urgent kiss. A kiss full of passion and possession. And Stella, in his arms, was responding with equal fervor. Seeing this, Ethan's eyes turned bloodshot. His clenched fists trembled uncontrollably. Before he saw them kiss, he had always believed his feelings for Stella were just guilt, not love. Even when he heard they were together, his primary emotion was anger. But now, there was only one emotion in his mind: jealousy. Ethan was going mad with jealousy. And if it were just familial affection, why would he be jealous? There was only one answer. He had fallen in love with Stella, and he had fallen for her much earlier than he had ever realized. But Stella had never had a boyfriend. She had always revolved around him, which led him to believe that she would always love only him. He never thought that Stella would truly, genuinely leave him behind. Ethan wanted to rush forward and pull them apart, but he knew he had no right, no standing to do so. Going over there now would only earn him Stella's disgust and push her further away. So, he could only watch them, watch Stella nestle shyly in another man's arms. And he was powerless. In all his years, this was the first time he had ever experienced the feeling of unrequited love. It was a strange feeling, so strange that it felt like he could fall into an abyss at any moment. He kept his eyes fixed on them until Felix wrapped an arm around Stella and they walked away. Only then did Ethan finally tear his gaze away. After they were gone, Ethan could no longer hold back and slammed his fist into the wall. Flesh tore, and blood flowed freely. So this was how Stella had felt all those times she had watched him with Leela. He belatedly understood just how cruel and vicious he had been to her. Ethan knew that Stella would never forgive him. He knew that the moment he had made her donate that kidney, it was over between them. So, this time, Ethan didn't fight. He knew he no longer deserved Stella. A deep sorrow filled his eyes. He took out his phone and dialed the number for his military base. "Hello, please cancel my leave request." "Yes, I don't need it anymore." There was no reason for him to stay here anymore. Besides, every day he stayed, his heart felt like it was being sliced by a knife. As he left, a self-deprecating smile touched his lips. He knew he had lost Stella for good. Chapter 17. Ethan returned to the capital, but he couldn't stop himself from keeping tabs on Stella. The photos the detectives sent him all had one thing in common: Felix was in every single one of them. Ethan's eyes grew dim. He was like a different person. After learning that Stella and Felix were together, it was as if Ethan had lost his soul. His old confidence was gone. He went about his days like a robot, just going through the motions of his work. He ate his 3 meals a day on time, but there was never a smile on his face. He stubbornly redecorated Stella's room to look just as it had before. He created the illusion that Stella had never left, trying to numb himself with this fantasy. As he did this, his mental state deteriorated. He even started sleeping in Stella's room every night, sometimes murmuring her name in his sleep. He dialed her number over and over again, only to be met with the same, switched-off message, but he stubbornly kept trying. When his longing for her was at its peak, he would register new, anonymous numbers just to hear her voice. He would call her, and when she answered, he would listen silently until she hung up. In those moments, he felt a sense of contentment. Seeing their son in this state, Arthur and Alina constantly tried to introduce him to debutantes from the capital's elite families. Each one was beautiful and talented, but Ethan never gave them a second glance, as if he had lost all interest in women. Ethan lived like this, in a numb daze, for half a year. It wasn't until a friend took him to the hospital for a checkup that he found out. He had depression, severe depression. The doctor repeatedly urged him to take his medication, and his friends repeatedly tried to comfort him, encouraging him to cooperate with the treatment. But he wouldn't listen and refused to take the medicine, because he knew that the pills wouldn't work. He knew where the cure for his illness was, but he would never be able to get that cure. Slowly, the military advised him to take a long-term medical leave, eventually leading to his discharge. He stayed at home, completely shutting himself off from the world. No matter how bright the sun shone outside, Ethan kept the curtains drawn tight, not letting a single ray of light in. One day, he suddenly remembered the harsh words he had once said to Stella. He had called her love letters strange things. He had thrown the letters she had poured her heart into the trash. At this thought, Ethan repeatedly whispered, "I'm sorry." He started to write. He picked up a pen and paper and began writing a love letter every day, placing it on Stella's desk. Even though he knew these letters would never be read, he persisted. He continued until the desk was piled high, but still, he wouldn't stop. One day, while buying letter paper at a shop, Ethan was stabbed. His attacker was Leela Vaughn. After stabbing him, Leela immediately took her own life. Her health was in a terrible state. She had smuggled herself back into the country for one purpose only: to kill Ethan Hawthorne. Now that her mission was complete, she could go in peace. But she never expected that Ethan would be lucky. The stab wound wasn't fatal. It just left him in a vegetative state, destined to lie in a bed for the rest of his life. But on that day, as he lay bleeding, Ethan had only one thought: he would never be able to write love letters to Stella again. Stella, this time, it's really goodbye. Chapter 18. 2 years later, Stella and Felix's term with the Western Project ended. They returned to the capital and, with mutual consent, quickly got engaged. Felix held Stella's hand, his face beaming with happiness. "Good thing I went on that Western Project trip with you. Otherwise, I would never have found such a wonderful wife. We're not even married yet. Who's your wife?" Felix wasn't annoyed. He just intertwined his fingers with hers and whispered "wife" in her ear, over and over again, cherishing the word. The wedding was grand. Every decoration was something Stella loved. In front of all their friends and family, Stella and Felix exchanged rings. Then, amidst the cheers of the crowd, they kissed. At the reception, Felix wrapped his arm around her protectively and announced, "Anyone who wants a drink can come to me. My wife has a sensitive stomach. She can't touch alcohol." In that moment, Stella was filled with an overwhelming sense of happiness. It turned out she was worthy of being loved after all. That night, they lay in bed, sharing their deepest thoughts. Felix's eyes were full of adoration. "Finally, I got to marry you." Stella's eyes welled up. "I'm so glad it was you." After the wedding, Felix and Stella both went back to their respective jobs. When they came home, they would comfort each other, recharging in each other's arms. They got a tuxedo cat and lived a free and happy life. As for Ethan Hawthorne, it was as if he had completely vanished from Stella's world. Until one day, while she was at work, Ethan's parents came to see her. They had lost their former vigor and looked as if they had aged 10 years. They begged Stella to go to the hospital and see Ethan. It was only then that Stella learned that Ethan was sick, and his illness had left him a vegetable, unable to move for the rest of his life. A look of undisguised shock crossed Stella's face. After some thought, she agreed. No matter what, she had once been part of the Hawthorne family. Now that Ethan was in this state, she had no reason not to see him one last time. In the car, Arthur and Alina told her about Ethan's condition. She learned that he had been sick for a long time. She sighed, marveling at how unpredictable life was. When she arrived at the hospital, they led her to Ethan's room. In the room, Ethan's eyes were open, but he was completely still. He was on a ventilator, looking extremely frail. Seeing this, Stella was so shocked she couldn't speak. She thought that to live in such a state was no different from being dead. Alina spoke gently. "Ethan, look who's here." "It's Stella. Stella has come to see you." At Alina's words, Stella stepped closer to Ethan's bed. She looked at him with a complex expression. "It's been a long time. I came to see you." Just as everyone thought Ethan wouldn't react, a single tear rolled down from the corner of his eye. In his mind, Ethan replied, "It has been a long time. Too bad I can no longer be a part of your life. Goodbye, Stella."